I am resident of Collinwood for YouTube. Jules Sage, joined by my buddy Butch Rosenbalm. We're here to continue our Western series with a movie that is, well, really, really good. And it's, to me, somewhat inspired Rambo a bit. Starring Charles Bronson, Lee Marvin. There's a lot of people in this movie, actually. Ed Lauder.
Really?
Ed Lauder is in this movie. I believe Harrison Ford is in this as well, if I'm not mistaken. Death Hunt, which is really, really good. When was the first time you saw this, Butch?
This time. I had never seen it before. Honestly, I don't think I'd ever heard of it, to be honest. I may have, looking at MDB and going down like Charles Bronson's credits, I may have seen it, but I don't think I'd ever actually, really heard of it until you asked about it.
See, now if I could have a time machine, I would just take you back to my grandfather's house, and he would probably tell you, hey, my wife's coming home, you might need to hide. But again, my grandfather shows me this movie with Bronson, and Lee Marvin is playing a Mountie, and Carl Weathers is in this movie too, playing a Mountie. And I love the banter between Weathers and Marvin's character. Lee Marvin, why does he deserve you? Why you? Because he deserves me. And it's really, really good that how this starts off, because really the cinema, we've talked about, I know we haven't done The Searchers, but we've talked about desert porn. Well, this movie is pure snow porn. It is it's what they call a snow western, much like The Great Silence. And with this, the cinematography does a good job. You see Bronson walking through the snow, and he comes upon a dog fighting ring, and these dogs fighting, and this one dog loses and is near dead, and Bronson gives the owner money and takes the dog. I was not expecting the owner to accuse Bronson of stealing the dog.
Yeah, you kind of have to accept that, but I agree. It's like a little, because he says, "Well, I paid double that for him," or something to that extent. So Bronson turns around and gives him another 100, and takes off with the dog. And for a second, the former owner looks okay, and then he goes into town and starts telling his lies, and starts our movie into motion.
Yeah, the Mounties, the Royal Canadian Police, the Mounties, are going to be involved in this. And this was the first movie I ever saw that had Mounties in it. I knew what a Mountie was from pro wrestling, because WWF, when they were WWF in the 90s, had this character named Jean-Claude Levesque, and he dressed like a Mountie. So I knew what a Mountie
was. Have you ever seen Dudley Do Right, or was that before your time?
Well, I didn't see Dudley. I never saw the cartoon, but I didn't see Dudley Do Right until Brandon Fraser played it. So I heard the name. So this was the first movie I saw that had a Mountie, from a fictional sense, had Mounties in it. And it's all in the snow, and I'm just like, these guys just went into town and lied to Lee Marvin. You don't lie to Lee Marvin. Like,
one thing Lee Marvin, I think, excels at is characters who are, I'm trying to think of the right word, disenchanted with their circumstances, let's say. I think back to, I believe his character's name is Major Russman in Dirty Dozen. He's kind of like, oh, he's pissed somebody off, so now he has to go pick out, 12 soldiers for a job that'll probably kill him. And in this movie, he's kind of like the old grizzled vet, and I don't have time for your crap. Well, he stole money, and it's like, and you can just tell it's like, I swear, a couple of times in my head, I heard the Murtaugh and Riggs. I'm getting too old for this shit.
I like how there is a younger Mountie too that isn't really familiar with what goes on up in there, and he just comes in and he's talking to him, and they're drinking. It's like, I love how Carl Weathers is just like, uh, his name is Lincoln. Like I think, God,
George Washington Lincoln Brown, and they
yeah.
call him Sundog. I'm not that good. I'm cheating. I was looking on my phone. I knew it was a long name.
Yeah, it's like I'm like, but wait, I'm thinking that is interesting. That's his name. I'm like, is this an alias or something? Like, did Carl? I'm again. This movie is supposedly, from what I've heard, is based on an actual event of the Greatest Manhunt, but here they, you get this lie, and Charles Bronson's character lives up in this cabin that I believe his father had owned, the character's father, I should say. And by the way, Lee Marvin's character actually has a girlfriend in this movie who wants him to retire and spend time with her. And she doesn't leave, and he goes, "Why haven't you left?" And she goes, "I'm waiting for you." I love that because we don't usually see Lee Marvin's characters with a wife or with a lover. It was that, because I'm used to either him playing a villain or just like you're saying, like Dirty Dozen or The Professionals. He doesn't really have an interest. He's just there for one thing. And this was not that case. Yeah, he is there to enforce the rules or what the law is. Um, and I love something that he says. He says this line, I think, a couple times in this movie. He says, "You got to decide when the killing stops." And I'm thinking, that's an interesting way of putting it. And I never thought about that, but when I was watching this earlier today, I was thinking of Will Penny, the movie we had did before our Christmas break, and thinking that's a movie with no law. No, you sort of have to be your own law, defend yourself, so to speak. And here's this movie that, yeah, there's law, but there's so many people willing to bend or break the law. You as a law officer sort of have to decide where to stop it all. And Lee Marvin sort of saying that is something I took away from that, or his character saying that. What did you think? I'm sorry, I'm rambling.
No. You're right. His character Lee Marvin's is a shrewd judge of men and circumstances. I mean, he even says to the guy who comes in telling him he stole the dog, he says something along the lines of, "Well, you're probably lying, but I better look into it." And yeah, towards the end, he says that line a couple of times. English is my first language. Um, to the rookie, to the new guy, that's Andrew Stevens, I believe that who that was. Um, and it's one of those things, you meet some people, and to put it into a real world uh, example, it's like when I met our mutual friend Patrick. After like 5 minutes, we understood each other on a certain level that kind of went beyond, just talking. And same thing with Charles Bronson and Lee Marvin in this movie. After when they first go to Bronson's cabin and they're talking, I mean, boom, you can see that these two guys get each other.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're probably innocent, but I need you to come into town. We'll solve this and we'll be back, be back in just no time. Well, of course, it doesn't work out that way, because we wouldn't have much of a movie. Because we're not going to do too many courtroom dramas here.
No, No, and Hannum High does not count as a courtroom drama when we go to do that movie.
Nor does Joe Kidd.
Yes, yes, no, it does not either.
But yeah, that's you hit it. I mean, you can. I don't know. Yeah, I feel like those two just automatically understood each other, and that's one of the reasons that when he says that line about he deserves me or however he phrases it,
yeah,
it's like if say Patrick or I became supervillains, the other one would be the one to have to go get them. It's like I'm the one that has to do this.
yeah. It's really, I love how when the guy shoots at Bronson's cabin and Bronson just shoots the guy cold dead and it's self-defense. And Lee Marvin's character just goes over and just kicks. That was just so good because it's like this isn't what he wanted. And now they have to have a shootout at this cabin and you see fire, like a firefight basically. And I love this because I hadn't seen this kind of firefight since Rio Bravo, and it was really, really good. I love one of my favorite scenes in this movie is Charles Bronson saying "My darling Clementine." It's so good. He's like got his thoughts to himself, and he knows what's about to happen, but he's not out of his mind. And that's basically, I mean, that's something they're not just accusing him of a crime. I want to be clear. They're sort of accusing him, oh, he's crazy. But we, the audience, and Lee Marvin too, Lee Marvin's character can see that he's not. He even says, "You don't look crazy," and I love Charles Bronson's response. Well, you look like a Mountie.
Yeah, one of the annoying things is he saves the dog there at the beginning, takes it with him, heals him up.
Yep.
During that gunfight that you just mentioned, one of the assholes kills the dog, and I could not wait for that person to die quick enough. I mean, we knew Charles Bronson was going to make it through the first part of this, so I mean, I've had dogs since I can remember, off and on throughout my life, and so it's like, but it's not hating on cats or anything. Don't misunderstand me. It's like you shot the dog.
Yeah.
No. You're not making it out of this movie alive.
And especially with Charles Bronson, you're definitely not making out of this movie alive.
You mentioned something when he's singing "My Darling Clementine," and his thought. We don't like have a voiceover. We don't have him going, well, they come here and they're going to go. I mean, Charles Bronson does something, and since we've done a few Charles Bronson movies, I kind of want to mention he does a really good thing where he kind of tells you what he thinks without without saying it, and I mean, he's sitting there and he's singing, and he's got his gun, and he's just he's ready.
Yeah.
He's just passing the time. And, all right, boys, you want to come get me? Come get me.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say, it always bothers me that, at least, in my younger days, Charles Bronson was only remembered for the Death Wish movies. And it's like, if that's all you can think of, you have missed a lot of good movies.
It's funny. A movie he does, Chato's Land, they actually did an episode like that in Have Gun Will Travel. So that, by the way, great movie, Chato's Land, that stars Charles Bronson. Charles Bronson has been in a lot of great movies, not just the Death Wish movies, people. And we've been discussing some of those movies on here. A movie I just showed my wife, I showed her Breakheart Pass with Charles Bronson, where he plays an undercover Secret Service agent. In a sense, he's sort of playing an American Bond. And it's in the Old West, and it's really good. And I told my wife how good it was. She's like, okay. She watched it. She goes, yeah, that is really good. So Ben Johnson's in it, by the way. Richard Karina's in it. But I digress. I'm getting off track. I apologize. But you're right. I agree with everything you said. He's sitting there. He's not saying anything. There's, like you said, there's no voiceover. He's singing, but you're sort of reading his face, and it's, no, I didn't want this, but I'm ready for it. Whatever comes,
Mhm.
I'm ready for it. And it's so criminally underratedly good. Bronson does this time and time again in his movies where he's not saying shit and he's ready for whatever's coming. And it's, again, it's so good in this movie. I love how they get him out of the cab, and because that's one of the best things about this movie. It's not just, they're not they are sort of killing time here in this cabin scene, even with the shootout. But once it leaves the cabin, it becomes one of the greatest chases ever. The great, literally a hunt, and that's what's so great about it, because you now have this open terrain where Bronson's character knows how to live off the land. Again, in many ways, I would dare say this movie is Rambo before Rambo. Just in the snow.
I kept thinking that the entire time watching this. I'm like, this movie makes me think of Rambo. I was going to mention that, and then you mentioned it right off, man. All right, fine. Apparently, it's much more obvious than I thought.
Well, what? Go ahead. What did you notice, like the similarities between this and Rambo? Obviously,
Uh, he's obvious. We find out later that he is a former soldier, I believe, special
yeah.
forces, and knows how to. And the guy that brings the information is like, well, he knows how to live off the land. He knows how to do this. I want to, before I go any further, I want to mention something. The first Rambo film, First Blood,
Yeah.
is criminally underrated because it's thrown in with Rambo 2 and Rambo 3, where Rambo becomes like this super soldier, Captain America, almost superhero. That's not Rambo, the first one. That's not First Blood.
Mm.
This is a guy who's obviously got some mental issues, who's suffering from some serious PTSD.
Mm.
Uh, just plain old has lost everything he's ever had, and is just looking for something. And I don't feel like Bronson's character is quite that far,
Right.
but he's decided, I've had enough of people. And he goes and he gets the dog and he buys supplies and he goes up to the cabin. He's like, screw y'all, I'm taking my football and going home. Gets accused of a crime that he didn't really do. Don't want to sound like I'm riffing on the Hulk TV show or The Fugitive or A Team. Then they chase him and he has to defend himself.
Right.
And yeah, it feels a lot like the first Rambo film.
I would say too, to sort of give a comparison between Bronson and Stallone, with the first Rainbow, Stallone does a lot of Bronson in that movie where he's not saying anything. Now his character, I would say, is way more messed up in the head because he's remembering Vietnam, and we
Yeah,
see that with his. And so with this, we don't have with Death Hunt, the movie we're talking about. We don't. To your point, you're right. We don't have a character who's mentally messed up. What's in common is, now, the difference common, I should say. In Rambo, the cop harasses Rambo. Um, and some of his deputies do. His one deputy especially harasses him and is really physical with him. Um, and Rambo escapes. With this, you don't have, with Death Hunt, you don't have an arrest. And the cops aren't, it's not so much the cops that are harassing him. The people are crooked and they're very shady. And they're sort of half crazy themselves because they're, not only are they dogfighting, but they fight amongst themselves too in this movie. Which is makes.
there's the subplot with the crazy guy that we find out towards the end of the film that's been killing people and stealing the gold out of their teeth. One thing I think this movie really fails in, that should be one of the lead offs
Yeah.
They find a dead body, the goat's missing out of it. So you find out that these, I'm not saying they're good guys, but not that they're necessarily bad guys. They're kind of understandably a little suspicious of someone showing up.
Yeah.
And then you do it, then you just start the whole movie like it is. It's like, oh, okay, these guys, I get, that way they're, I don't want to say okay, but maybe a little more sympathetic. They're not quite as, because I mean, there's some of them are just flat out villains, in my opinion.
Yeah, they're very distrust. There is, like, when Bronson's character shows up, they're sort of distrusting toward him, and I think they're just distrusting toward strangers, because the movie's subplot to this, to what Butch was pointing out, is there's a killer. There's somebody who's killing and taking stuff off of people, and you do. But the thing of it is, I agree with you. You don't find that out till later, and it's like the Mounties themselves. I think the reason they're not, my guess is that they're not catching this person is simply because that person too knows how to live off the land, and there's so many people out there in the land. It's like, well, who could it be? The country, what Death Hunt paints as a picture is the country itself. The mountains are so wide open. Where do you even begin to look?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
You don't know about some, and he kind of wants to become a, if you will, a Grizzly Adams, and maybe a little before your time. Same kind of thing. Accused of a crime, takes off, goes lives in the mountains. So they don't know who's living up in those mountains.
no, actually, I did watch Grizzly Adams.
Okay.
Dudley Do Right? No. Grizzly Adams? Yes. I had my grandfather did not permit cartoons, westerns only. Where I was Saturday night and where other kids were watching Saturday morning are two different things. Oh God! But you really have this great chase sequence that they're hunting Bronson continuously, and I love the fact that they get an airplane in this movie that is literally shooting at Bronson's character. It's so good.
It is, and it's also. I was reading on Wikipedia, of course, and I think it was the director said, we don't really have a villain, so they made the plane the villain. It was the plane is basically the 20th century.
Yeah.
These guys, are moving into, not quite moving from frontier town to civilized, but that it's coming, it's encroaching,
Yeah.
and like you said, it's kind of based on a true story. Thankfully, in real life, the guy in the plane wasn't crazy and just started shooting anything that moved, like the character in the movie does. Ends up killing Carl Weathers and Lee Marvin and Andrew Stevens, the rookie, both take their rifles and shoot and kill the pilot after that. And it's like, thank you, because he's doing okay. Other than the fact he's a jerk, he's kind of well, I'm the best pilot that's up here, and if anybody can catch him, it's me. And one of those guys that you see him on the internet. I'm an alpha. I'm an alpha, and you need to listen to me. And they don't know their butt from a hole in the ground. And this guy is another one of them. And he ends up getting killing one of the people helping him, and thankfully that ends up getting him killed character wise. I mean, so it's just that when I read that, I was like, okay, that scene makes a whole lot more sense now. I didn't quite catch it at the time.
You know who this character reminded me of when he started talking about how great he was? He reminded me of Gaston from Beauty and the Beast. No one is like I think this dude's related to Gaston a bit, just a tad. No, but he doesn't have the musical number. No one is great like Gaston.
Thankfully.
Yeah, right. It's like
I'm gonna admit something and hopefully not offend anybody, but I hate musicals. I really do. I can accept Frankenstein, Dracula, zombies, superheroes, supernatural, all of it, but there's something about 10 to 12 people suddenly falling into perfect dance moves and singing I just like, no, I can't. No. So, let alone when someone, Michael Jackson, takes zombies and has them fall into a perfect dance routine. Oh God, that just. Anyway, Georgia Mill, in the name of Georgia Mill.
Yeah. I mean, I've watched musicals, but I mentioned one Beauty and the Beast is a cartoon too, but it was also a black and white movie as well. Um, so he's very cocky, is what I was trying to get at, like you're saying,
Yeah,
and his own sort of cockiness and ego sort of gets him killed. I mean, he shoots at people who are, like you said, are trying to help him. And I love the fact that it's Lee Marvin's character who takes him down. It's like it felt right. Like I think if you have Bronson's character do it, it's a little too much because he's already
yeah,
sort of taken care of some characters. And I Lee Marvin's character is do the right thing, or at least try to do the right thing. And I love the line he says too. He said, Albert Johnson isn't doing anything I wouldn't have done, and that's really, when you hear him say that, it's like, oh, wow. Like, so he's already, you sort of got the sense at the cabin that Lee Marvin's character thought he was innocent, but throughout this hunt, Albert Johnson isn't doing anything really wrong. And that's what Lee Marvin's character is saying to the younger, he's really, in a sense, too, what's going on in this movie. Lee Marvin's character is teaching the younger Mountie how to be a Mountie in many ways.
yeah. I was just thinking, there's almost a Men in Black riff going on, and
Yeah,
he's Tommy Lee Jones, and the rookie is Will Smith, and you don't really catch that until the end.
yeah. I'll tell
But
you.
yeah, go
Sorry.
ahead.
I'll tell you a great place to pick this, like to pick up where this sort of starts off. The mentor, where he's trying to mentor him, and it's very brief because the young man doesn't take it seriously, and neither really should he, because they're they're sleeping around with women. Is when he first comes in and Lee Marvin's trying to talk to him, and he's just like, he's like, look, he goes, up here, this is he's the young man sort of represents the future, sort of like the plane did, and Lee Marvin's character represents the past and everything they did. And he tells them too in the beginning, he goes, you're gonna have to, he goes, one day you'll have to decide when the killing stops. And I don't think the young man really understood that until they got into this situation here and saw all this death around him. And I think he I'm the younger man, he doesn't have a ton of lines either, but really what he's selling with is him watching Marvin and watching what's going on around him. He sees all this death. And I think that's something, it's so good to see characters that get developed not just by words, but by actions and other people's actions going on around them.
Yeah, there's a scene before that I think, well, before the end, but it's when Carl Weathers is still alive, and it's Lee Marvin, the rookie, Carl Weathers, and the guy. I think it's the guy who claims his dog got stole, and he's like telling the rookie, you sure are pretty, and he got a pretty face, and he goes to kiss him, and the rookie, him and the rookie get into a fight, and Carl Weathers goes to get up, and Lee Marvin just puts his hand on him. It's like, let's let him deal with it. And he just finally, when he's on the rookie's on the winning side, and he's just pounding that guy. Then he lets him go stop him. And, obviously the rookie does not come from somewhere where you have a lot of these alphas.
Yeah.
And he has to learn, some people you can talk to and make your point, and it's okay. And some people you got to go thump them upside the head to teach them to stop.
I
It's kind of
really,
like the only way to stop a bully is, you got to stand up to him.
yeah, I really think Carl Weathers' character is a great representation too of he's not sure if this young man's ready for this kind of, not just the environment, but the people in it. And that's why Lee Marvin stops him though too. Hey, we need to see if he is. And again, there's no words, like you're saying. He just nope stops him with his hand, and again, less is more, and that's something we've talked about with these westerns too. Like, you don't have to have all this verbiage. It's about body language and what's going on in that moment. And like you said, here's this fight, and Carl Weathers' character getting up to stop it, and Lee Marvin, nope, let it go, like not saying it, but let it go, let him handle it, and
Yep.
they're more watching him to see how he handles it and how he handles himself more or less, and that's something they would do in the old west. And you hear stories about how lawmen would let their deputies go out by themselves. It's like, okay, so it's really cool to see something like this in a movie, this fight sequence, because it builds the younger character.
And it progresses him, and it shows more about him, and it's just it's an interesting way to progress the character without just, well, now that we've come this far, Joel, have you learned it? One thing I kind of hate. I hate hearing. You hear it off and on. Sometimes you hear it a lot. I think a lot of shows do this towards the end. Well, what did we learn today? And sometimes, usually it's funny, and sometimes it's like, oh my God, I really want somebody to go, I didn't learn anything. I didn't learn nothing. This is a waste of my damn time. You're still wasting it. I mean, I don't want to be rude or anything, but it's just like,
The there was, I forget what it was, but my brother's friend, well, our he's related to us, our cousin, he's very short, and there was somebody was watching some sort of educational program, and they asked that, what did you learn? And he just turned it off when other people watching. He goes, I didn't learn jack or shit. I'm just like, he goes, it's just like, he goes, half that shit I already knew. What the hell did I need to watch this for? And it's just like, he's right. He's right. It's like, why were we watching this? And my one cousin goes, that was important. He goes, okay, it's important to who? You? He goes, no one else gives a shit here. It's just like, and I was just like, okay. And then I just left the house. I'm just like, yeah, that was okay. That was funny. But you're right. It's like, you don't need this big, what did you learn at the end of this movie? I didn't learn jack and shit, but it's entertaining as hell.
Hey, there's an interesting thing I wanted to mention, and I noticed it right off as they were doing the credits. This film was produced by Al Ruddy, who may or may not sound familiar. He was the producer of The Godfather, and if you've watched I forget what service it's on. It's called The Offer. It's a series about the making of The Godfather. Seriously, him and his secretary are the only two people that aren't morons or idiots. So I found that he was working for Golden Harvest at the time. So I thought that was an interesting thing. This movie didn't do well, and I'm kind of not sure why. I mean, I think part of it is it's an old-fashioned film,
Yeah.
but filmed more modern, if that makes any sense. If this movie had been made, 10 or 15 years earlier, it'd probably be a minor masterpiece. But
Yeah.
it's just kind of got lost in the shuffle.
I picked this movie because of how good it is, and you're right, it didn't do well, but it's a great movie to watch. And Al Ruddy, right? The show's called The Offer. It's on Paramount Plus. Uh, to help my buddy Butch out here. Also, you learn in that that piece, the offer is Al Ruddy went on to do The Longest Yard. He gave up doing The Godfather 2 to do The Longest Yard, a script he wrote,
Yeah.
which was interesting. I didn't know that until, because here's the thing. I'll admit this. I've seen The Longest Yard. I never saw the credits. I knew Burt Reynolds was in it. That was it. That's all I needed.
I tell you what, it was that came out when I was alive, and my parents may have gone to see it at the drive-in, and me and my sister may have gone with them. I mean, I have vague memories of seeing it, but it might have been a revival showing, maybe with a double feature with Smokey and the Bandit.
Yeah.
After Burt, became a big star. And I remember later finding out about, The Longest Yard, and I'm like, Burt Reynolds as a football player? What I didn't know is Burt Reynolds was a college football player with a scholarship at Florida State University, my chosen college football university team. And he ended up giving them a lot of money, and where the football team stays is called Reynolds Hall. So he was actually quite the athlete.
Yeah, I think they mentioned that in the offer too. I'm pretty sure. I hadn't seen it in a while. I might be mistaken, so don't hold me to that.
Oh no, I'm holding it to you, or you to it, or YouTube it, or whatever.
Yeah, but Butch is gonna call me later if I'm wrong and scold me like there's no
Like
tomorrow.
2 o'clock in the morning. I just watched the last of this. I sat through 6 hours of this.
I sat through the whole
Scene at the very end.
I sat through the whole damn thing, damn you. It's all your fault. You were wrong. No. Oh my god. But what's your favorite scene from this movie? Go
Uh, there's some really good ones. For somebody that's never seen this film, I would tell them the opening dogfight scene. You can tell it's a very quick edit, and none of the dogs are really hurt. They're not really fighting, but it comes across, pretty realistic. But honestly, my favorite scene is the one there at the end, when we find out who the crazy goat tooth killer is. I forget what they call him. And he almost gets Bronson. Of course, Bronson's the star. He gets the drop on him and switches clothes with him.
Yep.
And they end up shooting what they think is Charles Bronson, but it's actually the crazy killer. And Lee Marvin has his binoculars, and he's looking, and he and I think the rookie are the only two that have seen,
Yep.
that are still alive, have seen Charles Bronson's character. And he looks at it and he sees him, and I really wished he had, and they're both kind of looking, I wished he'd just kind of gone. But and so Charles Lee Marvin turns to the rookie and goes, well, they take off when they shoot him, they take the crazy killer part of his face off, so even if he could identify him. But he kind of looks at the rookie and's like, takes the gun and hands it to him, and he's like, now it's your responsibility, and just
Yep.
walks off. And the rook's like, what? But it's an instant, if you will, an instant street cred, which is not a thing to say for a movie that doesn't have any streets in it. But it's like, you've learned enough. I'm tired of this shit. And I've got Angie Dickinson, who looks really hot, back here waiting on me. So it's yours, man. I'm out of here.
I
like that. It's like, you've graduated.
I gotta say this to the late great Lee Marvin. I'm really disappointed he left Angie Dickinson to begin with.
Well, he had to, and even he's like, well, I don't want to, but
yeah,
Hey, let me ask you this: did you feel like Angie Dickinson was playing a similar character to Feathers from Rio Bravo?
Yes, and I also think I sort of wonder. Usually, when you see Charles Bronson, his wife Jill Ireland isn't too far behind, and I sort of wonder if she had auditioned for this role. I'm not sure, but Angie Dickinson did a good job. I mean, so
Apparently, Joan Collins was supposed to be in this film, but her role got cut out.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's according to Wikipedia. So, proverbial salt here. What was your favorite scene?
My, I have a couple. One is obviously when he's sitting in the cabin and sending my darling Clementine, because it's so good. We again, like we've talked about, we don't hear a voiceover like you talked about. We just have Bronson with his thoughts, and he knows what's coming, and he knows what he has to do to survive. Here's the thing too with that scene: he's not going to kill anybody in pure cold blood.
No.
And he decided that right then and there. Um, which is really interesting for a fictional character because, I mean, we've seen fictional characters make that other choice where they go, oh, no, I'm going to kill people in cold blood because, they're a thing called revenge movies. But it gives them more nobility. And one of my favorite scenes is in the snow, is when Charles Bronson is actually just fishing in the snow. It's so simplistic. It backs up what they're going to say about him about he knows how to live off the land. And it's so cool to see that in this movie, and it's so good. And obviously, though I am not a fan of Gaston, the airplane scene is cool.
I think one of the things I like about the fishing scene is he's looking, he's doing a little bit of ice fishing, he's made his hole and he sticks his hand in and he pulls one. At first he misses, second time he pulls one out, but it kind of and goes back in, showing even though somebody knows how to live in this climate and how to survive, some of it still just comes down to plain old luck.
Yep. And that's what fishing is too, luck.
And patience.
Luck and patience, and if you have both, you'll catch the fish. Now, the ocean is where the fish catch you. Oh god! But the end of this movie, what I like most about it is that when he hands him the gun, he hands him everything. You got to just it's your turn to decide when the killing stops. And really, Marvin has done it for Marvin. The thing you get from the whole movie is Marvin's character has done this for so long. It's like you said, it's almost like you're waiting here. Like, I'm too old for this shit. And really, you sort of do hear it at the end. You don't hear the exact line, but it's like I've had enough.
What he says.
Yeah, I've got Angie Dickinson waiting for me. I don't need this shit. Oh god, but really, I love the scene when he's looking for the binoculars, and you're right, they do cut off the guy's. Bronson's character cuts off the guy's face, so they can't ID it as who it is. And Bronson looks back and he sort of smiles. Like Marvin's character, and Marvin's like, "Okay." He's like, "What? What did you see?" And it's like, again, this kid, he's been being mentored this whole time. Again, hey, ball's in your court, kid. You got to decide now.
If you want to run with it.
Yep. And I sort of wish I know it's based on a true story, so we weren't going to get a follow up to this movie, but I wish we'd have got a follow up to what happened with the young Mountie. Like, what did he do? But it is best left unanswered. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I was agreeing. Yeah. If I was Lee Marvin and I had Angie Dickinson to come home to it, I'd be like, all right, I'm out of here.
You guys want to go shoot somebody in the cage? Go right ahead. Peace.
See ya.
Yeah, it's like, I will say this about this movie. It may, because I live up in the mountains, as you know, it makes you feel the cold when you watch it.
I felt more cold, so to speak, watching this than I did with the White Buffalo.
Yep.
And White Buffalo is like up in the mountaintops.
I think because this looked so well. This was shot more realistically than White Buffalo was, and as I told Butch, I can't bring Butch to the snow, but I'm going to bring the snow.
As long as it's this kind of snow, that's okay.
I hear that. I hear that. Oh my god! It's again the atmosphere in this movie is it reminds me a bit of John Carpenter's The Thing. It's so good, and it makes your body so. It puts you there right away, and that's why I picked this. I wanted to pick this movie because it's so. All these westerns we picked from Kung Fu, they have this atmosphere to them, and this does too. Death Hunt definitely does, and has a great cast.
Yes.
What do you give this first time watch?
Uh, I'll give it a 4. There was a little something missing there for me, but I still enjoyed watching it. And, I'm pretty sure I'll watch it again at some time, or at least I would not be opposed to rewatching it.
Yeah, I give this a 4.5. It's really. I'm with you on the serial. Like the people do sell. They don't trust strangers. But for anybody who's going to go watch this for the first time because they've never seen it, and it is worth a watch. You might not pick up that there's an actual killer from the other people, other than they don't trust Bronson's character because he's a stranger, and that's your really only hint before you do find out there is a killer. And is it much of one? No. Now, do I think they did that on purpose? Yes, I do. I don't know why they did that. I'm sort of. Why do you think they didn't like more hint that there might have been a killer around?
I honestly don't know because it ended up being a major point.
Yeah,
And I don't know if they were just going for big surprise.
yeah.
Because, like I said, I would have started the movie with maybe Lee Marvin and Carl Weathers finding a dead body or somebody and reporting it. And, it's another one missing the teeth, and just right away, it makes their non-acceptance of Bronson a little more understandable rather than just God, what a town of assholes.
I mean, here's the thing: they are a town of assholes. There's
Yeah,
no question of that. But you're right.
you know, with that though, with the serial killer loose, you're like, okay, well, they're just they might be assholes, but they're at least cautious.
Yeah, they're. You do get this sense of paranoia from them, but I don't think that's enough to hint of what's coming. And that sort of is the biggest issue with this movie. Like it sort of does feel like out of left field. But when they do establish it finally, it's like, okay, I get why they were like that, like you're saying, but Death Hunt is definitely worth a watch. Go give this a watch.
Yeah. For those of you that are cheap like me, it is available on Roku under for a channel called VHS. Or find it like I did. Go to Google, type in watch Death Hunt 1982 or 81, I forget which year it is. Watch free online and it'll pop up. And it's on about 2 or 3 other services. And
I had to watch it the same way. I got to tell you, I went to go rent this on Amazon Prime and it said unavailable in my area. And I said, son of a bitch.
well, I messaged you and said, hey, I was going to order. First I was going to I tried to find it. And then it said it was unavailable. I'm like, well, I'm going to have to order it. I mean, no, we do have Prime. So, we would have got it pretty quick. But it's like, oh, ooh. And then just one day I happened to be on my phone at work during lunch, and I was like, "Hey, wait a minute!" And I typed it in, and boom, because I remember I searched on Roku for it, and it said no.
No, it's weird because Yahoo will say it is, and Yahoo's lying. But Butch is right. You can go watch it for free on a channel called VHS. Um, any closing thoughts on this movie?
Like you said, it's worth the watch. It's probably not going to change your life,
No,
but it's a good film, good actors, and it's worth the roughly 90 minutes of your life that you're going to watch.
it's damn entertaining, and it builds a good story. I do agree with you about the serial killer. It's something, and don't let Gaston drive a plane or fly a plane ever. It is your turn to pick, sir, for the Western for next week.
All righty. We are going to watch, just a second. Comanche Station.
That is
It
actually
is a Randolph Scott film. And my little reading glasses here are good enough to tell me what year it is. But Comanche Station with oh, wait a minute. That's not the one I'm looking for. Hold on. I'm sorry. There's one I'm looking, because I'm looking for it in particular. Okay, actually, I take that back. We're going to do Ride Lonesome.
Okay.
Ride Lonesome with Randolph Scott, Karen Steele, who was in the previous Randolph Scott film, and Pernell Roberts, later to become famous with Bonanza and Trapper John M.D. Ride Lonesome.
I do have a Western question for you. Bonanza or Gunsmoke? Which did you prefer?
Gunsmoke.
Yeah, me too.
Gunsmoke. I can remember Gunsmoke still being on.
I did like
that's not hating on Bonanza. Let me just say that Bonanza, I guess you'd call it more of a family show, whereas Gunsmoke was more adult.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's some really interesting episodes of Gunsmoke that really don't have jack to do with James Arness or Milburn Stone or Amanda Blake or even Festus or whatever second banana you want to go with. I feel like the quality of Gunsmoke is really high the entire run of the whole series.
It's the only. Here's the thing with Gunsmoke and Bonanza. Gunsmoke, you're right, is more adult, and I love the fact that James Arness actually got a career out of this. John Wayne recommended him for it. And with Bonanza, there's a little funny thing. Not necessarily with Bonanza, but there was a roast back in the day, and I got to see this on TV. Michael Landon and the guy who plays Michael Landon's dad on Bonanza was there for the roast. Yeah, and he's like, "Son, Dad."
There's it was when Johnny Carson retired, which was, I don't know if you remember that being a big deal. They had various clips of him interviewing people, and he was interviewing Michael Landon, and I forget exactly how it starts, but he's talking. Michael Landon's like, there were a lot of jokes that the Cartwrights were gay, and he goes, "I'm here to tell you they're not." But thank God Hop Sing who was their chef, butler, and cook. So he's like, thank God he was. Because if you never watched an episode of Bonanza, if you are a woman and you fall in love with a regular character on Bonanza, you're going to be dead in about 59 minutes. You're going to be dead, or you're going to leave town.
Yeah, in Bonanza, when you fell in love with one of the main characters there, it was sort of like the Death Wish role.
You were the big name actor on this week's episode of Columbo. You were either the killer or the victim.
Right.
We'll point out all the old references. Some of these younger kids are going to be going like, Columbo, Bonanza, what?
I'll give them one. Kojak.
I'll do you one better. Dragnet.
Yes.
And I don't mean with Ed O'Neill. I mean with Jack Webb and Harry Morgan.
Yep. Good stuff. See, the original Mission Impossible, and I do mean the original, the television show. That's when the missions really were impossible, not the ones with Tom Cruise.
There was a revival of that in the 80s.
Really?
I remember I used to watch it, and it still had Peter Graves in it.
I do know Peter. I believe Peter Graves was in the movie, right?
No, he was asked to be in it. Sorry, And because in the first Mission Impossible film, Mr. Phelps turns out to be the bad guy, he said, "No, I won't do that." And that's why they got John Malcolm, or is it John Malkovich? I think it's John Malkovich.
It's
No, John Voight. John Voight.
yeah,
That's why John Voight plays Mr. Phelps, because Peter Graves is like, "Oh hell no."
Peter Graves isn't going to ruin his reputation.
Nope.
And I don't blame him either. Yeah, great series, and this was a really good movie. Ride Lonesome is our next movie. Butch, buddy, is there anything you want to add before we go?
It's past my bedtime. I went to a concert last night, and I'm sure almost nobody will know who Jeff Tate is. He was the lead singer of a band called Queensryche, and I won tickets off the radio. And a friend of mine who'd gone to see Queensryche with me 20 years or 30 years ago, he went with me. We went and saw it. And the problem was, it was on a Friday night, and I woke up at like 4:30 Friday morning, came home, took a little nap, and those little things on Facebook you see about anybody over the age of 30 that's out after 9 p.m. took a nap. But I mean, I got home at almost 1 o'clock, and of course, even though it was like a concert at like a little bar, you're still a little wired, and and it was close to 2 when I got up, and I woke up about 7, and it's just like, okay. And I kept trying to take a nap today, and every time I would, the dog would bark or be like, "Oh, I gotta go do this," or "I gotta go do that." And so it's like, okay, you know what? It's time to go. It's time to go.
I said a friend of mine who's well over 40, who's way older than me. I sent him a Sabaton video, who's a death metal band I listened to, and he called me instantly. He's like, "What the fuck is this?"
Just for the record, Joel, I'm over 50. So when you say he's really old, get off my yard, you darn kid.
They're going to find my bones in Butch Rosenbaum's backyard. Butch, buddy.
No, they won't.
No, they won't. He'll incinerate them. He's smarter than them.
Feed you to the pigs.
There you go. I like that. Butch, it is always fun, buddy. I'll see you next week, and take care, bud.
Joel, appreciate it. Have a good one.
You too, buddy. Bye.
See ya. Woo.